Would you like to be somebody who understands what the Animus archetype is and its 4 different stages of development and integration? Then listen to this entire video where I explain the collective unconscious, the Animus archetype, its different levels of integration into consciousness, and also how a woman can be possessed by her animus. Before we get into it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life, and also Jungian psychology like this video. So let's get into it. So Carl Jung believed that the key to wisdom and enlightenment, and almost like a hypothetical godlike state, would be to integrate all the contents of your unconscious mind into consciousness, so you understand who you really are and you sort of transform, and then you almost become some sort of like a perfect being. And this is the process of individuation. And since the animus is part of the unconscious mind of a woman, she would need to integrate this into her consciousness, so it is quite a relevant topic. And if you don't do it, you can actually be possessed by your animus, which can produce a lot of unwanted outcomes and suffering in a woman's life. So let's get into it. So I have made another video on explaining the animus in depth beforehand. I will link it in the description. This is more about the 4 different stages of the animus development. Okay, so the collective unconscious is what a concept Carl Jung called referring to the unconscious subset of your psyche that is present in all humans and is the memory, let's say. It is the product of your ancestors, what they experienced. It is all stored in it. And part of it is the animus in women and the anima in men. It is basically the opposite sex within a person. So the animus is often related to masculine traits within a woman, or the anima would be then feminine traits within a man. So one key thing to note here is that men and women are never entirely masculine or feminine. They are not sitting at one extreme pole. They are a mix of both. Typically, men on average will tend to be probably a bit more masculine. So there'll be maybe something like, they'll be more masculine, but they will have also feminine traits. And then women will be on average more feminine, but will also incorporate masculine traits. So they are quite dynamic, and they are not sitting on 2 extreme poles, men and women. For example, a very masculine man might want to hide his feminine traits because it is seen as socially not unacceptable, but undesirable, because it is, maybe he thinks it's seen as weak or so. So he throws the feminine traits of himself into his shadow archetype, which is not a very good thing, because the shadow gets bigger. And for those who know what the shadow archetype is, it can then manifest itself in your behavior in very unwanted, violent, let's say, ways. So a woman will also have naturally masculine traits within her, but the majority of her traits will probably be feminine. Yes. And if any of you are interested in the 4 stages of the anima development, I made a video yesterday on that. I'll link it in the description if you also want to check that out. So the animus is not only, well, you could say it is the masculine trait, or the masculine sort of section of a woman, but it is also, that would mean it is a woman's connection to authority, to the rational, to the logical, to the intellect, to the logos, which is speech and logic, let's say. Now, the prime imprinter of the animus in a woman's life is typically a dominant male figure, like her father or a brother or an uncle or a grandfather, whatever. And the thing is, the animus is quite distant to women because, or compared to the anima in men, because in men, the prime imprinter is the mother, and the mother is the primary caregiver for all children, and especially for young men, for kids, for boys. So they have a very close, or let's say, the Anima is more in proximity to a man. However, the animus in women is more distant because the prime caregiver is also a woman, but not the man, not a masculine person. So she has a relationship to her father, to the prime imprinter of the animus, who is more distant. And therefore, the animus is often portrayed as a collective, as multiple people, as this distant thing, instead of a single individual figure like the mother with the anima in men. Yeah. And the animus is often represented as like an internal voice of authority within a woman, which sort of whispers in a woman's sort of conscience. So, and a key thing to always remember when regards to the anima and animus is that they have both a positive and negative pole. They are neither all good nor all bad. So the positive aspect of the animus might be assertiveness, rationale, logic, logos, courage, wisdom, and the negative aspects might be oppression, ruthlessness, being brutal and destructive, and opinionated. Yeah, so both of these can manifest itself if a woman is, for example, possessed, I would say, by her animus, or more tendency that there would tend to be more the negative. If a woman is possessed by an animus, which I'll get to in a second, she will tend to manifest the negative traits, I think. Okay, so what are the 4 stages of the animus development? So we're going to go from stage number 1 to stage number 4, and stage number 1 is a very underdeveloped, not integrated animus, and stage 4 is a highly integrated, highly developed animus. Okay, so stage number 1 is called the man of mere physical power. This is referring to a woman who is relatively powerless and not in control of her own life. She seeks support from an external, masculine, strong, powerful man who should guide her and protect her. And you could refer to like a damsel in distress, like a weak, naive sort of woman. And the second stage is then the man of action or romance. And this type of a woman seeks a man who, or sees men who are able to set goals to achieve them and strive towards them, and she will look for such a man. But she is still submissive to his guidance. She sees men as more than just physical power, like the previous stage, but she does still sort of follow in his footsteps, sort of hide behind him and follow him. Yeah. So then the third stage is the man as a professor, clergyman, or orator. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So here the woman seeks men that have a strong logos, who are eloquent, who are able to speak eloquently, have an intellect, and have good opinion, or let's say present opinions. Now a woman here is able to assert herself and her own opinions. She is now able to set her own goals and achieve them, but her relationship to the unconscious is still quite underdeveloped, because the bridge, the mediator to the unconscious, the animus, is still not active, or not very active, let's say she's not aligned with it. And because the animus would enable her to bridge her own natural femininity, her feminine wisdom, and present it with logos, speech, intellect, and logic. And finally, the fourth stage is the man as a spiritual guide. Here the woman has built the bridge to her unconscious. She has her own intellectual ideas, opinions, and direction in life. She is able to direct her femininity with rationale instead of letting it manifest itself randomly and chaotically. Now she is independent to external authoritarian pressures that might have guided her before, when her animus was not well developed. Now, I think one should look at these four different stages as almost like what kind of a man the woman seeks, but also what kind of a man lies within the woman. If it is an underdeveloped woman, the man within her is just like a sort of, kind of like a bit of like a caveman, one of just mere physical power. But the last one is a man of wisdom, of spiritual wisdom, and let's say the most developed man. So Now one might ask oneself, well, how would it manifest itself if the animus is underdeveloped? Well, then the animus possesses the woman, and the thing is that the animus will always express itself, whether you like it or not, because it is an archetype. It is always there. It is part of the collective unconscious, and it is present in all women. Now, that means it will reveal itself, whether you like it or not. How could it reveal itself? So a typical example would be if a woman who is possessed by her anima, she is a very uncomfortable conversational partner. She's very opinionated and stubborn in her views. Her ideas and worldviews are very rigid and dogmatic. She wants to argue for the sake of arguing. So you can't really have a constructive conversation with her, because she will just try to outdo you, because that's the point of the conversation in her eyes. And it's like she has a little voice whispering in her head, or not a little one, but a voice whispering in her head, telling her that other people, especially men, are trying to oppress her and think that they are more intelligent than her. And hence she tries to bash them back. So her relationship to authoritative figures are distorted. So men who have, it's just like men who have an underdeveloped anima. Women with an underdeveloped animus are disconnected from their emotions and feelings. They do not understand why they feel certain ways, because they also don't understand their unconscious mind. The bridge to the unconscious mind, the animus, is underdeveloped. So they don't have this sort of antenna which can pick up and analyze why they have certain moods, why they're feeling certain ways. So they're a bit sort of, their emotions are cloudy, or they don't really understand themselves. So they're quite chaotic, one could say. Now, how do you develop or integrate the animus? How do you get from stage 1, so the man of mere physical power, to the man of spiritual guidance? So the key really to integrating the animus is to ask questions and reflect, and consequently develop one's own authentic ideas and opinions and worldviews. So as a woman, one should reflect on what you think about certain ideas and concepts in life, but make sure you develop your own opinion. So be independent of what other people tell you to believe. You should be believing. Think about what your own values are. Not the values that you were taught to have, but the values you actually have yourself, which you really prioritize, which you hold dear. And depending on your values, you can then choose what goals you want to strive for in life, what your aim should be. And then you consequently follow up and strive for those goals. So you become independent and authentic. You will be able to control yourself and develop your internal authoritarian self who is in charge. And it is key to be authentic though, because the key is you don't want to fall for an external sort of authoritarian idea which is telling you how to behave. You should develop your own idiosyncratic personality. And do not fall for what is expected of you as a feminine person, because that will typically be in society simply feminine and not masculine by all means. But as I think men and women are in their true nature, they are a mix of both. They are on a scale between masculine and femininity, hence they incorporate both. Because if you do just follow some external idea, some authoritarian idea that is imposed on you, you're simply a puppet and not in tune with your idiosyncratic personality that would stem from your unconscious mind. Yes. So in conclusion, the animus is like the masculine authoritarian figure within a woman, and it can be either very underdeveloped, which then would lead to an animus possession in a woman, and she would sort of try to she would have a very dogmatic idea, and she would feel like she needs to prop up her rationale and logos with some rigid opinions and bash other people in conversation for the sake of arguing. And then on the other side we have the very developed animus and well-integrated animus, where the woman has her own authentic ideas, opinions, and she is in charge of her, let's say, relationship to authority, and that is the key to wisdom. That is like a step closer to individuation and becoming a whole person, which Carl Jung deemed as sort of the goal of humans, or the most valuable thing to do. So a lot of this content was based on a YouTube channel called The Diamond Net, who has a very interesting video on the anima and animus, which I will also link below, which you can check out, which explains the concepts, the archetypes, more in depth if you'd like to know more. And I'll also link my other 2 videos on the animus archetype and also the anima and its 4 different stages of development. So that was it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about this Jungian psychology, self-development, dating, and how to reduce suffering in life. So thank you for listening.